Here I am. Here we are at the front of the trailer. First front panel in place, which I thought wasn't going to be that hard to make. I was wrong. As you're starting to realize, it's a fairly commonplace happening. Now this whole panel here shouldn't have been too much bother really, but I also had to turn it around this edge, and if you want to have tutorials about doing things like this and some of the problems that actually pop up, pun intended, once again Peter Tomasini, he can explain it all. But once I started to turning this here part, this edge coming around, all kinds of stuff started to happen to a panel which before that was looking pretty good. So I had to do a lot of wheeling, turning again, more wheeling, turning again. And of course, hopefully I've learned something, but it's going to be a challenge to do the other side as well. So in the end, when I pushed it in place and welded it in place, it was still a little too wide here. It should have been a bit more shrunk. So since I welded it in, once again, filler is going to be my savior. I just made a slit, which amazingly enough, you know, I didn't have to take any material out apart from actually just making the cut. And then I could just push it in and weld it. So that's why it's looking like that. And it's looking okay, but I hope not all of the panels give me the same kind of struggle. Another front panel on, and they keep giving me a bit of trouble, same as the other one. Once I get to trying to make this shape over here, funny things happen to the whole panel, which if it wasn't for this part, I don't think would have been so hard. This one I started welding from this part here, this corner, and of course, as you can see, I ended up having to make a cut again because it really should have been a bit more shrunk over at that corner. But once again, I won't make another panel because of that. A bit of filler is going to have to cover that up eventually. Fairly happy with the shape, apart from that little thing. As you can see, I made another design decision, which is to add more windows, actually two of them, because there's going to be one over here as well. So two small portholes, I think they call them. So there's going to be the skylight, there's going to be windows in the doors, and there's going to be two small round windows in the front of the trailer. I think that's going to be a nice kind of added feature. I've started to work on the next panel, and I can tell you one thing. You really don't need any exercise, and you don't have to go to the gym when you're working on these panels because they really give you a good workout. I have a fair bit of shape into it now, but it's going to take a bit more. As you can see, it's not really curving down the way it should, so I'm going to have to shrink this part quite a bit more around here and probably down here as well. And every time you shrink this part kind of goes the other way. So you have to work on that as well. I'm working up a sweat, I can tell you. And I try to do a few other things in between as well, but hopefully I get there in the end. Abject surrender. Well, you can be the judge of that, but shape together was just too much for me anyway, to try to do in one go. This whole thing, of course, has been a lot of trial and errors. And this was too much, too big a panel for me to shape. So I've been struggling, wrangling with this piece for some time. I made a decision to make it in two pieces. This is going to be scrap. And I've kept on working with this one. It's going to go on like that. And that's starting to look pretty good. I'm not really there, but it pretty much has the shape it's supposed to have. And then I'm going to make a new panel for this. And I need to have that as a separate piece. Hopefully I can get the shape I want then. Lesson learned. So the sheet metal taught me a lesson. This is still scrap, I guess. At least for the time being, and until I maybe find some other use for it. So I started over. And I think, at least to some extent, that I've redeemed myself. Which is always good for a vulnerable ego. So this is the other piece that I made. And as I suspected, it of course was much easier to shape when it wasn't hanging on to the rest of that part. So I'm fairly satisfied with that. Which also means that pretty soon half of the trailer has its skin on.